I found a hidden phone. It had messages pricing my daughter like a product. The woman I loved wasn't just lying. She was selling my child to strangers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's story is about a mother who thought she was doing everything right until the person she trusted most nearly destroyed her daughter's life. Have you ever trusted someone, only to realize too late they weren't who they said they were? If so, this one might hit close to home. Stick around to see how she uncovered the truth and fought to protect the one person who mattered most. And hey, if you enjoy stories that are raw, real, and sometimes hard to hear but impossible to forget, hit that subscribe button so I can keep bringing them to you.
I used to think grief was a straight line, something you worked through and left behind, like old boxes in the attic. But grief doesn't move forward. It loops. It hides in songs, in smells, in birthdays, in little girl giggles that echo through an empty house. My name is Julia Mason, and I haven't told this story to anyone but my therapist, until now. Sienna was 5 when her dad, my high school sweetheart, died in a plane crash en route to a tech conference in Boston. I remember holding her tiny hand at the memorial, watching her draw smiley faces on the program because she didn't really understand death yet. In that moment, I promised myself 2 things. 1, I would never lie to her about anything. And 2, I would never let another man replace her father. That second promise, it aged poorly. I didn't date, not for years. My world revolved around Sienna. I knew her favorite jelly bean color, yellow, the names of her imaginary friends, Bucky and Eliza, and every weird little twitch her face made when she was about to lie. We weren't just close, we were entangled. I was her mom, yes, but also her confidant, her safety net, her everything. We moved to a small town in Oregon for a fresh start when she turned 11, a 2-bedroom craftsman with creaky floors, ivy on fence, and the kind of silence that makes you think. I taught English at the local college. Sienna joined the theater club, painted her walls with watercolors, and built fairy houses in the backyard. Just the 2 of us. And that was enough. Until it wasn't. I met Elena Rowe at a parent volunteer mixer at the school. She was there with someone else's kid, a friend's niece, I think. She had this energy that didn't match the room. Confident without being loud, she made jokes under her breath and smelled like lemongrass and old books. We talked about everything and nothing. Salinger, aging, loneliness, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a decade. Intrigued. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear, but sometimes something finds you. Elena and I had coffee, then lunch, then movie nights. I didn't hide it from Sienna, I just didn't know how to explain it yet. When I finally told her, she blinked once, then said, "Cool, can I finish my essay now?" I laughed, she shrugged, and for a while, it was okay. Sienna was 15 when Elena officially moved in. She brought a cat named Ghost, 1,000 books, and more vintage scarves than anyone needed. She made the house warmer. She cooked, reorganized the pantry alphabetically, I mean, who does that? And talked with Sienna about things I didn't fully understand. Gender expression, music festivals, something called body alchemy. It was weird, but not bad. Not at first. They got along great. Better than great, honestly. I'd come home and find them in the living room, laughing over thrift store finds or watching some art film I'd never heard of. Elena said Sienna was wise beyond her years, that she had a magnetic femininity, which sounded weird to me, but I brushed it off. Elena was eccentric, artistic, maybe a little pretentious, but she was never unkind. Then the changes started. Sienna began dressing differently. Not just teen girl trying things out different, but skin-tight dresses, platform heels, and makeup tutorials that made her look 25. She dyed a streak of red into her hair and pierced her cartilage. Okay, fine, I thought. Teenage rebellion, it's a phase, it'll pass. But it didn't. She stopped texting me back, locked her phone, started sneaking out. When I brought it up, Elena said, "She's just exploring her autonomy. You should be proud she feels safe to push boundaries." That sounded smart, professional even, but it didn't sit right. There was a coldness behind Sienna's eyes that hadn't been there before, a disconnect. She'd gone from this open-hearted, emotionally expressive kid to someone I barely recognized. I chalked it up to puberty, to hormones, to stress. I made excuses. Then one night, I found a receipt in the laundry for a $240 lingerie set in my name. I confronted Sienna. She just shrugged. "Elena said I deserve to feel powerful," she mumbled before slamming the door. I stood in the hallway for a long time, holding that piece of paper like it might start burning. That was the moment I felt something shift in me. Not just fear, but a deep, primal alarm, like an ancient bell ringing somewhere in my ribs. Elena didn't just have influence, she had access. And suddenly I realized I wasn't sure who I'd let into my home. There's a moment every mother dreads. It's not the first heartbreak, or the first slam door, or even the first lie. It's the moment when you look at your child and realize they are becoming someone you don't recognize, and worse, they don't want you to recognize them. That was what Sienna had become. Unreadable. After the lingerie receipt incident, I started paying closer attention. Not the casual, "I'm just being a concerned parent" kind of attention. I mean full-blown internal investigations. I watched the way she avoided eye contact, the way she'd flinch ever so slightly when I walked into the room. She was hiding something. Or maybe she was just being taught to hide something. Elena still played the role of partner of the year. She made homemade granola, she put sticky notes on my bathroom mirror that said things like, "Don't forget who you are," and "You're doing great, Mama." She bought Sienna flowers for no reason, told her she was stepping into her womanhood, and that power makes people uncomfortable. I should have felt comforted. I felt sick. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. One afternoon, while cleaning the downstairs bathroom, I found a phone tucked inside the folded towels beneath the sink. Not Sienna's, not mine. A burner. Locked, of course. But the case had stickers on it, band names and a small cartoon wolf, the same ones Sienna had on her laptop. I didn't tell Elena, not yet. That night at dinner, I brought up an old story, the time Sienna peed her pants during a spelling bee in 3rd grade. I told it every year. It was tradition. She used to laugh. This time, she glared at me like I'd outed her on national television. "That's not funny," she said flatly. "You always make me sound pathetic." There it was again, the coldness, detached, practiced, like someone had rewritten the emotional script inside her head. Later that week, her school called. Dress code violations. 2 boys had been caught trying to sneak into the girls' locker room during Sienna's gym period. Rumors, gossip, Instagram pictures with too much skin and not enough context. I pulled her aside, gently, privately. I asked her what was going on. "You wouldn't get it," she said, folding her arms. "You've been boring your whole life." It wasn't the words that broke me. It was the way she said it. Not with spite, but with pity. Like she truly believed I had missed out on something essential, something Elena was now giving her. Later that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat across from Elena in the living room. "I feel like I'm losing her," I said. Elena looked up from her book. "She's becoming herself, Jules. You have to let go at some point." "But it's too fast," I said. "Too sharp. She's not okay." Elena's expression changed, subtly, but enough. She tilted her head and smiled, but her eyes didn't. "She's just waking up," she said. "Some girls take longer than others." Waking up. That phrase clung to me. I didn't sleep much that night. By the weekend, the burner phone had vanished. Aunt Lillian, my mom's older sister, came to visit for Sienna's mock trial performance. She's old school, former military, sharp as a tack. Afterward, we had tea in the kitchen while Sienna was out with friends. "She's different," Lillian said, without prompt. "I know," I whispered. "And that woman," she added, stirring her tea slowly, "she watches Sienna like a hawk, but not like you watch a child, like she's grooming her for something." That word. I hadn't dared think it, but it dropped into my chest like a stone. The next Monday, I skipped work and drove 2 towns over to meet with a private investigator. His office smelled like printer ink and cheap cologne, and he had a stack of framed fishing photos behind his desk. "I need to know everything about a woman named Elena Rowe," I said. He leaned back. "Birth name?" I shook my head. "I don't think that's her real name." He smiled, not kindly. "It never is." I didn't tell him about Sienna, not yet. Just enough to get him started. I paid in cash and left feeling like I'd swallowed glass. The next day, Sienna came home late, eyes bloodshot, hair slightly damp. Her story didn't match her timeline. I asked where she'd been. "With Elena," she said. "Doing what?" She smiled, but it wasn't hers. It was Elena's smile, closed lip, knowing, smug. "Networking," she said. "You wouldn't understand." I got the call. The private investigator, his name was Dave, which somehow made the whole thing feel grittier, said he had something. "Meet me in person," he said. "Too much to send in an email." So I drove to a diner off I-5 that smelled like fryer grease and black coffee and slid into the booth across from him. He pulled out a folder like this was a scene from some low-budget cop drama. "She's not Elena Rowe," he said. "That name's one of at least 6 I've traced. Real name's Eleanor Marston. Used to go by Ellie Marsh, Elena Ross, even Nina Vaughn for a stint." I stared at him. What else? He opened the folder. Inside were printed mugshots, younger versions of her face, different hairstyles, but always the same eyes, cold, calculating. She did time, minor fraud, a few sealed charges in Arizona. But this, he tapped a grainy news clipping, this is the one you need to read. It was from a Florida newspaper. Headline, "Woman accused of exploiting teen for online content." Victim, 15-year-old girl from a single-parent household. The parent, a recently widowed father. The timeline, 3 years ago. The article didn't say much, juvenile case, sealed files, but it said enough. Elena had moved in, gained trust, and blurred every line that should have protected that kid. "She's a predator," I whispered. Dave nodded. "The sophisticated kind. She doesn't hit, she doesn't threaten, she guides. With praise, with pretty words. It's hard to prosecute emotional manipulation, but if you can prove intent, that's different." "Can you follow her?" I asked. "I want to know where she goes when she's not with us." "Already started," he said, "but you should know, she's not working alone." My stomach dropped. "There's a man," he said, "about 10 years older than her, seen together in 2 cities, including here, goes by Caleb Reese, also an alias. Priors for solicitation, identity fraud, parole violations. You should be careful." I barely remember the drive home. I just kept picturing that grainy photo of Elena, or Eleanor, smiling like she'd never done a thing wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling fan and pretending to breathe slow and even. She curled into me around 2 a.m., whispering, "You've been distant lately." I forced a hum in response. If she sensed anything, I'd lose what little advantage I had. The next morning, I told her I had a conference out of town that weekend, a lie, and left for work early. I looped back and parked across the street. By 11 a.m., Elena walked out of the house, dressed in tight black jeans and a coat I'd never seen before. She got into a car I didn't recognize, a gray Audi, and drove. Dave followed. An hour later, he texted, "They're at a storage facility off Old Canyon Road. She's inside with a box." He sent a photo, Elena unlocking a unit, pulling out what looked like a tote. On the side, a label in Sharpie, S. Sienna. When I got home that night, Elena acted like nothing had happened. She made lentil soup and asked if I wanted to do face masks. She kissed my cheek in that overly warm way she did when she thought I was getting suspicious. I played along, but something inside me had calcified. The grief I'd carried after my husband died had turned to steel. I'd let this woman into our lives, into our home, into my daughter's heart. Now I had to undo the damage. I went into Sienna's room that night while she was showering. I didn't snoop. I didn't have to. Her journal was sitting on the bed, wide open. The page said, "Elena says my mom's afraid of me becoming stronger than her, that she's jealous of what I have. I want to believe she's wrong, but sometimes it feels true." I sank to the floor. She didn't hate me. She'd just been rewired, gaslit. I had to act, not just for my daughter, but for every girl like her. So I made a plan. Step 1, protect Sienna. Step 2, record everything. I bought a digital recorder, the kind that fits behind picture frames, and placed it in the living room. I planted another under the kitchen table. Every conversation became evidence. Every whisper, every weird phrase Elena used, power currency, age is a mindset, men are mirrors, all of it started to paint a picture. She wasn't mentoring Sienna, she was marketing her, and I had no idea who was buying. The worst part wasn't what Elena had done. It was realizing how much of what had worked. Sienna still laughed at Elena's jokes, still leaned into her when they walked through the farmer's market, still borrowed her lip gloss, her perfume. She looked at her like a sister, a mentor, maybe even a goddamn hero. And every time I saw it, I felt like I was screaming underwater. That week, I moved fast. I pretended everything was fine. I let Elena believe she had full control, smiled when she kissed my cheek, nodded along when she talked about feminine growth. But meanwhile, I copied every text, backed up every recording, and kept a running file with timestamps and transcripts in my office drawer under a fake label, Curriculum Revision Notes. I needed one more thing, the third rail of any custody drama, any trafficking case, any abuse investigation. Proof that Sienna didn't know what was happening. Because without that, they'd say she chose it. That Friday, Elena told me she was taking Sienna shopping after school. "Girls' time," she said with a wink. Something about that wink made my skin crawl. I texted Dave. He followed them from the mall to a cafe across town, then to a parking lot behind a hotel I'd never noticed before. Not seedy, not luxurious, just discreet. He called me 30 minutes later. She introduced her to Caleb. My throat closed. She called him a friend of mine in business. They didn't stay long, just talked, but the man never stopped staring at your daughter. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. Instead, I waited for them to get home. Sienna was quiet, subdued, said she had a headache and went straight to her room. I knocked a few minutes later, brought her some tea, and asked gently, "How was your day?" She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Elena said not to say anything," she whispered, "that you'd freak out, but I didn't like him. He was weird." I kept my voice level. "Did he touch you?" "No," she said quickly, "but he said I looked older than 16, that I had an old soul, and he kept asking questions about what I liked, what I wanted." I asked if she'd recorded anything. She nodded. "Just the audio. I hit record when we walked in. I wasn't sure why." She handed me her phone. I copied the file to my computer before she could second-guess it. That night, I made her a deal. "You go stay with Aunt Lillian for a few days," I said. "Tell Elena you're spending the weekend with friends. I'll handle the rest." Sienna paused. "You're not mad?" "No, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "I'm ready." The next morning, I told Elena that Sienna had left early for a study retreat with classmates. She didn't ask questions, just hummed and started making pancakes like nothing in the world was off balance. I forced a smile, but my hands were trembling under the table. Sunday, I went through the house again, top to bottom. This time, I found it. A second phone, hidden in the lining of one of Elena's boots in the front closet. No fingerprint lock, just a passcode. I'd watched her type it a dozen times. Inside were dozens of messages. Some to Caleb, using codes I didn't fully understand. She's primed. I've prepped her language. Still soft. Needs pushback. End of month ideal. Pricing TBD. Some to others, burner numbers with images. Not graphic, but wrong. Posed, like Sienna was a product catalog. My vision blurred. There were also messages to Sienna. Daily affirmations, compliments. Your mom doesn't see you. You deserve more. Your beauty is power. I wanted to throw up. I screenshotted every message, every thread, every file, emailed them to Dave, BCC'd myself, then I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it. That night, Elena asked if I wanted to do a movie night. I said I had a migraine and went to bed early. I didn't sleep. Monday morning, the police arrested Caleb Reese 2 towns over. Parole violation was the public charge, but that wasn't the real reason. They had started building the trafficking case. Now it was my turn. That afternoon, I sat down with Elena in our living room. I had a hidden recorder under the couch cushions. The plan was simple: get her talking. I found something in Sienna's backpack, I said casually, a note about someone named Caleb. Her hand froze mid-stir in her tea. Just wondering who he is, I added. She said he's your friend. Elena blinked slowly, then smiled. He's an investor in some of my projects. Projects like what? She leaned forward. You know how I mentor girls, right? Help them grow into themselves, right? Well, some men are willing to support that. It's unconventional, but empowering. I said nothing. She took my silence as curiosity or permission. Girls like Sienna, she continued, they have something rare. If you teach them young, they can build real lives. No dead-end jobs, no trauma, just elegance, security, and choice. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. I think I need to understand more, I said softly. Her eyes lit up. I can show you. I had everything I needed, but the game wasn't over. Because Elena, she'd never give up that easy. And she had no idea that Sienna was coming home soon, not as prey, but as bait. Because now we were in this together, and we were going to burn it all down. There's something terrifying about knowing the storm is coming and still having to act like you're enjoying the weather. That week, I smiled harder than I ever had in my life. I let Elena kiss my cheek, I let her cook dinner, light candles, play her soft jazz playlists like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was bracing, waiting for it all to crack wide open. And when it did, it wasn't a slow break. It was a rupture. It started with Elena planning a getaway weekend. Just her, me, and Sienna. She said it'd be healing, that we needed to reconnect away from the noise. That alone told me she was getting desperate. Caleb was gone. She didn't know how much I knew, but she sensed it was more than I was letting on. She also didn't know that Dave had installed GPS trackers on her car, or that I'd already spoken to a detective named Mallory Chang who specialized in digital exploitation, or that Sienna had sent the audio from their shopping trip straight to the district attorney's office, time-stamped, geotagged, and backed up 6 ways to Sunday. We weren't playing defense anymore. We were building a case. The night before the trip, Elena made her move. She poured wine, my favorite. She wore a silk robe I'd never seen before, lavender with lace trim. I feel like you've been pulling away, she said gently. I've had a lot on my mind, I replied, voice calm, measured. Her fingers grazed mine across the table. You know I love both of you, right? Sienna's special. She needs someone who understands her, someone who sees her potential. I see her, I said. I've always seen her. Elena's expression didn't shift, but her voice dropped half a pitch. You're scared of what she could become. No, I said, locking eyes with her. I'm scared of what you wanted her to become. The air changed. She didn't blink, just slowly pulled her hand back and stood. I think I'll finish packing. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sienna, who was staying across town with Grace, her best friend, and Grace's mom, who, conveniently, worked dispatch for the county sheriff's office. I'd told them everything. Sienna had heard the recordings, read the messages, and cried until she fell asleep on my lap. Was it all fake? She asked me. No, I told her. The connection was real. What she did with it, that's the part that was wrong. The morning of the trip, Elena made us breakfast like always, except this time, she spiked my coffee. I didn't drink it, of course. I'd been faking it for days, pouring it into a travel mug and dumping it down the sink in the laundry room. But I let her think it worked. I slumped in the car, played drowsy, gave her just enough confidence to start talking again. She muttered things under her breath while she drove, half to herself, half to me. I caught fragments. They always break down eventually. Should have started younger. Caleb knew better than to get caught. We didn't get far. 2 miles outside city limits, a fleet of unmarked SUVs surrounded the car. Lights flashing, guns drawn. Elena slammed on the brakes, screamed, tried to reach her phone, but it was too late. The door flew open. "Julia Mason?" an officer shouted. I nodded. "Passenger, I'm okay." They took Elena quietly. No dramatic outburst, no final threat. Just silence and a hard stare as they cuffed her. Cold, empty. Like she'd known this day was coming all along. The aftermath felt surreal. The DA's office built the case fast. Between Sienna's recordings, the burner phone, the messages to Caleb, and the previous victims who began to come forward once her name hit the wire, they had everything they needed. Elena, real name Eleanor Marston, pled not guilty. Didn't matter. The evidence was airtight. She got 18 years. Could have been more if she hadn't taken a deal. Caleb got 30. Federal time, no parole. Turns out they'd been doing this for almost a decade. Different cities, different names, same playbook. Groom vulnerable girls, exploit their loneliness, use empowerment as a mask for control. But not this time. Not with us. It's been 11 months. Sienna's 17 now. She's still funny, still a little sarcastic, still plays her music too loud. But she walks differently, talks differently. She double-checks who she lets into her life now, and so do I. We go to therapy, together, separately. Sometimes we don't even talk about Elena. Sometimes we talk about missing her. And that's okay, because feelings aren't failures. They're just steps. She applied to 3 universities, wants to study psychology, maybe specialize in trauma counseling. She says she wants to help girls like her, the ones who didn't even know they needed help. Last week, I found an old picture of us, her in pigtails, me with tear-streaked cheeks, holding her at the airport the day we moved to Oregon. I used to look at that photo and feel like I'd failed her. Now, I see 2 survivors. Sienna asked me recently if I'd ever fall in love again. I laughed, told her, maybe, but I'll run a background check first. She laughed so hard she cried. And honestly, so did I. Because after everything, after all the betrayal, the manipulation, the almosts, and the what-ifs, we still have each other. And that's everything.
If this story stirred something in you, anger, sadness, hope, or even just a moment of reflection, I'd love to hear what it meant to you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone else feel a little less alone. And if stories like this matter to you, stories that go beyond drama and dive into what it really means to protect, survive, and heal, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. There's more to come. Thank you for listening all the way through. That alone means more than you know.